Ok, c'est deux systèmes.
Ce sont les systèmes différents.
Bingo, ok.
Okay, so do I put it down?
Put it on, please.
Yeah. Okay.
You can just say hello, testing.
Hello.
Perfect.
Is it good?
It's
Yeah,
good.
Okay.
So I listen to the Zoom. If there's any problems, I'll let you know. We fix the mics, but usually there's no problem.
And you said Paula was.
I'm taking her role because
Ah.
Paula's sick. Yeah.
Ah, she's sick.
Yeah.
Not the COVID.
No, I don't think so. I think a little cold. Okay, we're opening up now. So, thank you so much for being here. Alrighty, folks, here we are. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and bienvenue tout le monde. Thank you for joining us via Zoom or in person in ForSpace. We are streaming live from Concordia University's ForSpace, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. Nous reconnaissons la nation Kanien'kehá:ka comme gardienne des terres et des eaux sur lesquelles nous nous réunissons aujourd'hui, and we make this acknowledgement in order to bring awareness and understanding of the history of Indigenous peoples and their territories, and as a call to really rethink one's own relationship with the city, the land, and environment. So ForSpace is activated daily via live events to foster engagement around the research projects, initiatives, and dialogues and development across Concordia University. So it's our pleasure to collaborate with our colleagues in the Office of the VP Research and Graduate Studies to host this series of conversations between Concordia's distinguished university research professors and their colleagues. This live recording will in due course be edited and released as a podcast across our channels, so stay tuned for that. But for now, we are live streaming this event, and I'll share that link in the chat in just a minute. And we have reserved a few minutes at the end of the conversation today for any questions and comments that might arise, so feel free to raise a virtual hand and we can unmute you in the webinar. Or if you pop something into the chat, I'll happily read it out for our guests here. So I will now be switching gears between Anna ForSpace and say a few words on behalf of Interim Vice President, Research Graduate Studies, Paula Wood-Adams, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. Here's what Paula had to say. With research excellence a hallmark at Concordia, it is no surprise that our faculty members are among the most celebrated researchers in their fields. From new discoveries to the continued expansion of knowledge in existing areas, our researchers are known locally, nationally, and internationally for their work. And while there are various research awards and accolades at Concordia, the title of Distinguished University Research Professor is indeed unique. This annual distinction is Concordia's most prestigious form of recognition for all overall research achievements. It recognizes faculty who have demonstrated outstanding and sustained distinction in research over the course of their entire careers. They must be recognized nationally and internationally for both impact and leadership in their field. So since the award began in 2018, only 8 researchers have been awarded the milestone DERP title. Michel Magnan, a professor in the Department of Accountancy, was awarded this honor in 2021. An event like this is a great opportunity to learn more about his distinguished academic and research career. So I'll invite you now to please join Emilio Boulian, Michel's colleague in the Department of Accountancy, as he engages Michel about his research achievements. Over to you, gentlemen. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this introduction. So first of all, my name is Emilio Boulian. I'm a professor at the Department of Accountancy, John Molson School of Business, Concordia University. And I would like to ask to Michel, because for the interview, I will ask you, Michel, because we have this long, I would say, name. Can you introduce yourself, in a few words?
Okay. Good afternoon, Emilio. Good afternoon, everyone. So Michel Magnan. I'm also a professor in the Department of Accountancy at the John Molson School of Business, and I happen to hold the Stephen Jaroslavsky Chair in Corporate Governance. I've been at Concordia for 22 years, actually, tomorrow. So it's been a while, but I guess I started teaching 40 years ago. So my experience in academia, I think, is kind of showing its age now, and I'm getting concerned about it.
You should not. Thank you, Michel, because as we say, the title, is Distinguished University Research Professor. The objective of the talk today is to share with the audience your views, your experiences with colleagues at Concordia University here in Montreal, and we look forward, to hear more about your successful career. Let's start, for instance, just right where you become. So you start your career at Touche-Ross, now called Deloitte, a large, big accounting firm, as an accountant, as an auditor. May you please tell us, why the accounting domain? Because you could have, get into a different field. And then why have you moved to an academic career?
Okay, that's a good question. Actually, which answer is actually has three layers. Why account? I guess the first question is why accounting? I did my CEGEP or college, junior college in sciences, and my goal was to become an actuary, which actually I was admitted to at the university level. Also, I was thinking maybe I should have gone into law, so I was admitted into the law school, and I was interested by business. So at the end of the day, I picked up business at the time at HEC Montreal to do a Bachelor in Business Administration. So once inside HEC, then the question was, should I pick accounting or finance? It was a tough decision, which I delayed as much as I could because I was interested by both topics. At the end of the day, I ended up picking accounting because at the time, the opportunities in the job market seemed better in accounting. And also I decided, well, even if I pick accounting for my undergraduate, I can always do finance in my master. So that's why I became an accountant. I was interested by numbers. I was interested by financial transactions. So I think that was the impetus to choose accounting. Then decided while I was doing my stage at Deloitte as an accountant, I decided to start my MBA at McGill with the finance focus, and beginning part-time. And then I said, well, it might be good to finish this MBA in one shot, like in 1 year, and do it full-time. Quit Deloitte and do it full-time, but I would need some money to survive in the meantime. So I went to see, at the time, the chair of the accounting department at HEC Montreal. I said, could I get a few courses to teach, to earn some money? Since I had done my undergraduate degree there and people knew me. And his response was, well, we'll do better than that. We'll offer you a job as a lecturer. You can do your MBA and you can teach for us. But I would say that it was just a transitory solution. But then when I started teaching, I liked it. And my MBA also had a thesis, which I found interesting. So I said, well, why don't I become a professor? And that's how I decided to choose academia as a career. I would say I'm an accidental professor. Like I never had any plans to become a professor. It just happened in terms of opportunities arising.
It's interesting, Michel. This is a positive accident. So can you please tell us more on this back to school project? As we said, you had your CPA designation, you worked for the accounting firm, you decided to complete your MBA. Then after that, you decided to get into a PhD at University of Washington in Seattle in the West Coast. So you were in the East Coast, decided to go to the West Coast. Can you tell us why, you went to Seattle and why such a path? After that, you decide to...
Okay, once I decided to become a professor, at the time, you could become a professor in accounting without necessarily doing a PhD, but I decided that I would be a professor with a PhD. And I did my due diligence, investigated several programs. It was pre-internet days, so I went to the library, looked at scientific publications, who was publishing from where, wrote to most major business schools to get information about their doctoral programs, talked with people who had PhDs to gather information. And I guess what clinched my choice of the University of Washington was the fact that I got a call I remember very clearly, one morning I was at home and the phone rang, I answered, and it was the chair of the Department of Accountancy at the University of Washington calling me to say that I'd been admitted into their PhD program. So that made an impression upon me. And I said, thanks. And then I said, can I go and visit? Because I'd never been to the West Coast. So I went to Seattle the following week. I just spent a few days. And I said, this is it.
Okay.
The West Coast, Seattle, Puget Sound, Montreal, like this, it was it. And because it was a city I could feel comfortable with, and the program was a good program. And actually, when I went, the faculty all seemed very nice. So that was it.
Okay. So it's interesting. So let's now continue on this, and focus on your career since you obtained your PhD. So, and what is interesting, I believe you're unique in such a thing, Michel. So you held, position, as a professor in the 4 Montreal Business School. We're fortunate in Montreal to have 4 large universities, 2 Anglophone, 2 Francophone. And you worked, for UQAM, HEC, GMSB at McGill. Can you tell us any reason for this move at the time? And tell us your experiences, because these are different institutions, different culture, different language. Can you just tell us your experience and
okay,
what does motivate those changes?
That's a good question. It's true that I've been in the 4 Montreal business schools, which is rather unique. When I came back from my PhD, I would say that I was in search of the right fit in terms of my newfound skills as a researcher and the environment within the Department of Accountancy or the school, which will allow me to grow. And I don't know, maybe I was difficult and I was young, and maybe I was maybe a bit arrogant in some respect. And I felt that I could move around, and I did actually. But I think each school had its own strengths, and also, I would say, weak spots or blind spots. And it took me a while to find the right fit in terms of my ambitions, my abilities, and the environment I would evolve in. And I would say that I ended up at John Molson before it was called John Molson, actually, 1 year before. And I think for me, that was a discovery. And it allowed me to grow into something which I think I wouldn't have been able to do in the other places, despite the fact they all have advantages. The other thing too, Montreal has a joint doctoral program. So when I came back from my PhD, I was able to connect with people from all 4 business schools. So even if I legally had changed schools, I felt I was doing the same job, supervising the same type of doctoral students, interacting with colleagues all over the city as co-authors, as co-teachers. So I think that probably explains my sequence of jobs. But I think John Molson and Concordia was, I guess, a very nurturing environment from my perspective.
No, it's interesting, and even in your CV, you have been in charge, of the doctoral student, in the 4 university program. You have worked, with a lot of different, researchers from all over the world, with a lot of PhD students and MSc students, leading to tens of publications in top journal. You have more than 100 publications in the referee journal, and successful completion of PhD thesis. There is a significant number of PhD students, that you supervise. Can you just tell us, getting advice in this regard? So what are the do and the don't, and how do you see team-based research, and how to be so successful to publish, with a lot of different people, and to make sure that a PhD student will complete their thesis in a good time?
Okay, there are several questions in that question.
Sorry.
I would start by saying that from my perspective, to be a good scholar, or to be a successful scholar, you need to be almost like a project manager, because you cannot, you have to pursue different projects at the same time. because you never know in advance what you're going to find. You never know in advance what kind of difficulties you'll encounter as you work on a particular project. So you have to maintain, I call that a portfolio of projects at various stages of advancement. So you need to have I think some organization skills. That's a start. Second, to work with different colleagues and different doctoral students, I guess you need to enjoy what you're doing. And I remember some of my former professors saying, well, at the end of the day, you have a successful project. Yes, you get the publication, but would you like to go out and have a beer with your co-authors? That's a key test.
Okay.
That's a key test. You need to enjoy what you're doing, because if you want to keep on doing it for a long time, if you don't enjoy it, time is going to be long. So that was always a criterion in terms of picking co-authors as much as possible. I think people with whom I trust and with whom I have a good rapport. Sometimes, some collaborations don't work out. You don't necessarily have a fight, but the fit or the way you're working don't work. So you go your separate ways. But at the end of the day, you need to have fun. Okay. and enjoy what you're doing. So that's I would say a key criterion in picking up co-authors. And also a complementary of expertise. So you need to work well together so that your competencies dovetail one another. With respect to students, I view my job more like a coach. You need to have empathy. You need, with some stern direction, but empathy. Because students, you have different types of students. They come from all over the world. So you need to adapt to these different students. At the same time, you need to steer them in a particular direction. So you need some stern advice, but they are human beings. So over the years, I had several students, they cry in my office or having all kinds of family or personal issues. So I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but you need to have some empathy to their problems, understand, and try to find a way to make them pursue their project and achieve their goal, which was ultimately to do a PhD. But you cannot write the thesis for them, but make sure that I'll do everything possible to ensure that they complete their degree. I think I view that as my goal.
Yes, this is what I see for the audience. That we know it's a long journey. It's 4, 5, 6 years, sometimes a PhD. But I had the benefit, to know Michel, for a number of years. And what I would say is the enthusiasm to bring in a project, when you get in. So if we look at your research portfolio, it's very impressive, as I said previously, in terms of publication and quality. But what is impressive as well is the diversity of topics. For instance, you cover financial reporting, sustainability disclosure, executive compensation, ethics, governance, and just a few, there is other topics as well, and a variety of methods. You have been able, to have qualitative and quantitative. So can you tell us, how can you link all these topics together? Because at first sight, it looks very diverse, but you find a way to cover different area using different methods. How can you handle such a thing?
Okay, that's, I would say there are a few explanations. I guess by nature, I'm somewhat curious and interested by various topics. So I think that's who I am. So that explains why initially, when I was trying to decide where to go at the university, I debated between actuarial sciences, law, and business, which are somewhat different. But going back to the issue of the diversity of research topics, I would say that a key foundation for my research is my core expertise as an accountant. As an accountant, we are, I think, somewhat detailed in the way we approach problems. That's who we are. And also, we are experts in measurement. So there's always, if you look at most of my topics, there's a measurement angle or measurement perspective, which underlies most of my research. So that's the core foundation I built upon. The second foundation I acquired during my PhD studies at the University of Washington, the program was very broad-based. We got exposed to various paradigms, various research methodologies, and various theories. So that was the spirit of the program at the time. And the faculty members, if you look at some of them who were there when I did my PhD, they actually moved back and forth in terms of the type of research topics and methodologies they use. So I was influenced by this, and so my knowledge and experience at the PhD level was not maybe as focused as in some other programs, maybe not as deep in one methodology, but I got exposed to a wide range of methodologies. And for me, methodologies, it's one tool. Like, depending what's the question, well, it allowed me to pick the right tool that fitted the question I wanted to answer. I think that's the second part of the answer to your question, is that my PhD training led me to pick topics which may not seem related in appearance, but there's always a connection in terms of measurement, in terms of the need for measurement expertise, and also, broadly speaking, they're connected. Governance, if you like governance, well, governance, it's accounting is a foundation for governance. So they're interconnected. Sustainability, well, sustainability disclosure, well, it's disclosure. Well, accounting is disclosure. Okay. So I tried to make use of, I think, the elements of each of these topics which were interconnected.
It's interesting that you're training, and now you're replicating that training, in the PhD program with students where they have, by definition, different definition and different methods.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a tough question for you. So in the list of questions that I have to ask you, so can you please name me 3 research projects or publication that you are the most proud of, or the most representative of yourself?
Okay.
3 among all these hundreds.
I think I'll go with maybe themes and maybe some particular projects. I would say one stream which I'm particularly proud of is my research on what was called at the time environmental accounting. And many of these papers are with Denis Cormier from UQAM, with whom I started working back in 1990. And we have two angles in that stream of research. One was on the I would say environmental accounting dimension, that is, do environmental liabilities exist? What's their foundation? How do they map onto financial statements and then onto the evaluation of companies? And another stream was on the environmental disclosure. So why firms disclose environmental information, and how do investors respond to such disclosure? I think my work in this area has led to several other papers and has been the foundation for much later work. But at the time, it was very risky because it was not perceived to be mainstream. But now, environmental accounting or sustainability accounting is viewed as mainstream, but that's 30 years later. Okay. And it's now published in most journals. But at the time, it was very risky, but I didn't care because I found it was interesting. A second line of research, which I think was leading edge and promising, was my work on fair value accounting, which actually, it happened, I was asked to do a talk at a conference. It was right at the time of the financial crisis. and they wanted to know what was accounting's role in contributing to the financial crisis of 2008. So I started doing some research, did my talk, and one thing led to another and to several papers with lots of recognition, both on the, I would say, the practical and professional side and on the academic side. And a third line of research is my work on executive compensation. I was with my wife, Sylvie Saint-Onge, who is at HEC Montreal. I was one of the first researchers to do research on Canadian executive compensation data back in the 90s, and doing some further work on the impact of disclosure on executive compensation practices with doctoral students, Linda Thorne and Jane Craighead, both of them at McGill. So again, the joint program connection. And so that work led to several other works later on and many doctoral theses with several students. So I would say that's probably the third area of research I'm fairly proud of, which made some impression.
It's interesting because for those of you interested by executive compensation, Michel, has been asked and still asked, for Anglophone and Anglophone network, to give opinion about executive compensation. One thing I would like to ask you, because you have, as I said, an impressive dossier in terms of research, but you have been able to stay connected, what we call the business community and the business world. So my question is, how have you been able to stay connected with the business world? Because it's not that evident as an academic. An example of that, Michel, can you speak about your involvement with Cyrano? Maybe some people don't know what is Cyrano, but I will ask you, tell me, what is Cyrano? What do you do there? And how does it connect, with your academic work?
Okay, thanks. Actually, I'll answer by the end of your question. Start by the end of the question. Cyrano is the Centre interuniversitaire de recherche et d'analyse sur les organisations. So inter-university research transfer center on organizations. So it's a transfer center set up more than 25 years ago, and all Montreal universities are partners of Cyrano, as is Bell Canada, Rio Tinto, Autorité des marchés financiers, so many private sector partners, and the Ministry of Finance in Quebec. So Cyrano is a transfer center. That is what it does. It takes, I would say, academic knowledge and applies it to the analysis and resolution of practical problems. So that's what it does. And at Cyrano, I've been involved in several projects which were I guess, sponsored either by the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economic Development, Autorité des marchés financiers, or private sector partners, a city, banks. So what we do is that we apply our academic skills, research methodologies like qualitative and quantitative to the analysis of a particular issue, a particular problem. And then we produce a report in which we provide the analysis and offer some recommendations. So that's what we do. And it's a great way to stay connected in two respects, because I'll pick one project I did for the Ministry of Finance. This project was on the Quebec financial services industry. In the context of that project, we gathered quantitative data, we did some analyses, but we also interviewed several leaders of the Quebec financial scene. So we got in touch with lots of people, and we ended up presenting our conclusions. My partners, Brian Campbell and Robert Normand at Cyrano, we ended up presenting our conclusions to the Minister of Finance himself, Éric Girard, and to the Deputy Minister. So that's very interesting intellectual exercise, but at the same time, practice grounded, because we were looking at the financial services industry in Quebec, and we had to offer practical recommendations to the government. And did we make an impression to the minister? I think we did. Did it change anything? Maybe to a limited extent, but it's difficult to know at the end of the day. But it allows you to remain connected because you conduct research on practical problems.
Okay. So your research is feeding practical issue, and practical issue is feeding your research.
Exactly. Exactly.
So this is I would say that just for that, I believe Cyrano, is very useful.
It is.
And another things that you touch upon, because unfortunately
by the way, if I may,
yes.
Just on that side, I just completed a project actually in which Concordia University is a partner, and it's for the Ministry of Economic Development, and that project is on biomanufacturing and innovation and its potential for economic growth in Quebec. So Concordia University is a partner to that project, but we have several private sector partners. And again, it's a very practical issue, and we're applying economic analysis tools to the analysis of that issue.
Okay. So another area that is connected, with your involvement with the business world. So you have been involved, for a long period of time with the Charter Director designation, because as we know now, the Board of Directors and organization, we need some kind of professional. We're asking more from them. They have some designation, they have some training and so on. And you have those designation, and at the same time, you're teaching for years, to those associations. Can you just tell us a few words, why this involvement in such a thing, and how do you see in the future that we have more professional people on board of director? We will stay from good governance, but I would like to have your point of view about such training.
Well, I guess the Charter Director designation, or in Quebec, it's Administrateur de Société Certifiée, ESC, which is offered by Université Laval. I guess started about 15 years ago, and you have also the Institute of Charter Directors, which is Charter Directors at McGill, at McGill University, which is offered by McGill. I was always interested by governance. I did my doctoral thesis on a governance topic, is executive compensation. I always followed governance issues. So when these programs started up in the early 2005, 2006, I debated, maybe I should do it. Because to just make sure that my academic knowledge is actually practical. And I talked with a few people, and they say, well, if I were you, I would do such a program, which I did. I did the Charter Director program. And what was great is that I was a student. I was back as a student, so it was good to
back to school again.
Yeah, back to school. So, and as professors, I think we need to always update our skills. So, making sure that my skills in governance were up to date. Well, that was a great opportunity. Also, I got to meet several people who are taking the program with me, and it led me to maybe a foundation. Broader perspective on governance, because I was quite well versed in accounting, financial reporting issues, and compensation issues, but governance is much broader. So I think that's what the program brought me. And since then, I've been involved as an instructor in the program, and also I was on the board of the Institute for Governance for several years. So looking at governance with both an academic angle, but also with a practical angle, because it's a combination. And a big issue in governance research is that it's a black box, is that nobody knows what goes on in boardrooms. But having followed that program and being involved in governance organizations, I got to peek at what's inside that black box of boardroom decision making and discussions.
But I believe, in addition to that, Michel, a question for you. You have been on different boards, but how have you ended up able to sit on a very important board such as Dejardins? With Dejardins, is a big financial institution, not only in Quebec, but in Canada. So can you tell us how you end up to be able to have a seat on that very prestigious, board of directors?
That's a good question. It's true that there's only a few people who get asked to sit on such boards. Desjardins is a fairly large financial institution, and so how did I get there? I would say there might be different stories, but one story is that several years ago, back in 2010, Desjardins was looking for an academic partner to offer a course to its staff about the financial markets and how did financial markets influenced decision making at Desjardins. And they got in touch with Concordia. So the John Molson Executive Center got a contract with the Dejardins to offer such a course at Dejardins throughout the organization. And within the John Molson School was asked to be the one of the instructors in that program. Some other colleagues also got asked, but I was kind of the lead instructor. And so I ended up going to all over Quebec, up to Chibougamau in January, Sept-Îles, Bécomo, Val-d'Or, Rivière-du-Loup, everywhere.
So you know Quebec very well.
Yeah,
now.
everywhere. And every time with a vice president of Desjardins, because it was a team teaching exercise. So, and one of the vice presidents I ended up teaching with was, at the time, Guy Cormier, who is the current president and CEO of Desjardins, and the current chief operating officer of Desjardins, and some other VPs. So I got to know several people at Desjardins, and I met Mrs. Leroux, who was the CEO at the time, and I told her, I said, this is a very interesting organization. You know, if I could do more, I would be open to, if there would be other opportunities to contribute more. And I guess it remained in her mind, and she asked me to join one of the boards of an affiliate of Desjardins, and I got involved at Desjardins Securities and then Desjardins General Insurance. And people got to know me, and I suppose they appreciated what I brought to the table, because that's how I ended up being appointed to the board of Mouvement Desjardins. So I guess it's a combination of factors. It was opportunity, but at the same time, I suppose I brought something positive to the organization, which was appreciated.
Okay, so now we are at the end of the interview. Michel, this is the last question that I would like to, we speak a lot of different things, research in your career, and the academic, but I would like for student, for example, so I make in the audience, maybe we have some student, what would be your advice, for student, GMSB, for a successful professional career?
Okay, for students,
because we start with that. You with the BCom students. So if you have BCom student today, so what would be your advice?
BCom students. I guess you should. We're talking about BCom students. Okay, let's start with this one. Okay. I think the first thing is that you need to pick to figure out who you are, but also what do you like, and to pick a topic where there's a fit. Is that you need to enjoy what you're doing, and to pick a field which you'll enjoy. I think that's a critical element in whatever choice you'll make. You also need to be focused, I guess, to plan ahead somewhat. Not too much, because you need to remain opportunistic in the right sense of the word. Things happen. But you need to have some kind of a plan, like a medium-term plan, so that you motivate yourself. And I would say what's very important to give you milestones, or I would say goals that you aim to achieve. Like, let's say, okay, I'll do my BCom and I want to finish by this date. Then I want to work. Then I want to do an MBA or a master. Where and when? So you need to have some kind of a medium-term plan because otherwise, then you may meander vaguely. But so focus, but at the same time, enjoying what you're doing. I think these are two key ingredients. A third ingredient, which comes a bit later, is you need to pick the right partner in life. You may be surprised to hear that, but I would say that I wouldn't be who I am and where I am without my partner, that is my wife. Hopefully she would say the same thing.
We're going to call her after the meeting.
Hopefully she would say the same thing, and I know she does, because that's actually what she teaches. She's a professor of management, because the right partner will make the difference. That is, it will leverage your abilities and your capabilities. But the wrong partner will undermine your efforts, will be a energy drain, and will compromise your ambition. So finding the right partner, and the right partner, it depends. It depends who you are. It depends what are your ambitions. Depends what you want to accomplish. But it's a critical element. I would say enjoying what you're doing, having some focus, and getting the right partner. But the right partner is probably the most important.
Okay. Thank you, Michel. We finished all the questions that I have to ask to you. Now we'll turn the floor to Anna, and maybe we have some questions, from people on the Q&A.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you.
I think you found the right partner in Emilio for this conversation. that was really great. Thank you both for that. I do see one hand raised. So Pedram, if you'd like to jump in, we'll be able to hear you in the space. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good afternoon, Michel and Emilio. It's good to see you again. I'm a recent graduate of Concordia PhD program. And I have two questions, actually. The first question that I do have is related to the point that Michel mentioned about, like having empathy towards students as a professor of, JMSP faculties. I was a lucky one, I believe. My supervisor was also someone empathic and always present for me. But overall, when I reflect and look back at the program, throughout these years, I felt that PhD students never were paid enough attention, because I believe maybe PhD program is not the cash cow program for JMSP, and it never got the the attention that it deserves. For example, I don't know if you both recall that day after they announced that they're going to remove all the computers from the 9th floor. That day you both came to the 9th floor, and I confirmed that you both were empathic enough to be present there and ask about the status of the students, and just investigate, look into the issue. But overall, when I see my experience at Concordia and JMSP, I always felt we were under pressure. So having said that, you mentioned that being empathic is important. What do you suggest to do as PhD student, future PhD student? Because I already graduated, and I am working full-time as a consultant, and I'm going to be a faculty soon. I got acceptance to be a faculty of a university in Canada. So I want to, do the same thing for my future students. And I just wanted to hear from you, what about Concordia? What do you think needs to be done at Concordia to help future students, PhD students, to get better, better, what they deserve, better attention and better right in terms of their education and their resources, instead of cutting the subscription to certain databases. I believe you both work on corporate governance, and you are aware of Boardex and ISS and all those databases. And I know recently Concordia cut the subscription of those. So what do you think needs to be done? Because I don't foresee a good future for PhD program at Concordia. And I really care about this program because I graduated from this, and I do like to see improvements for future PhD students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. There are several dimensions to your questions and to your comments. I think one way to, I guess maybe right off the bat, I think I would maybe not disagree, but maybe bring some nuance to your comment about the relative importance of the PG program within Concordia. From my discussions and from my knowledge of the importance of the topic, be it with the department chairs or the associate deans, the dean, or the current director of the program, Dr. Lesage, I think the PG program is deeply valued by, I think, the current administration within the faculty and by several of our colleagues. So I think maybe there's a misperception, but it is important to many of us, including the administration. That's my perception. Now, in practice, you know, how it's reflected and how it's implemented, there might be some disconnects or some misperceptions, but I think deep down, I think it's important. So that's one thing. Second thing, my understanding is that we're pouring, recently, we've started pouring significant resources into our PhD students in terms of scholarships and funding. Guaranteeing funding in, I think, which I perceive to be much better than what we were doing several years ago. So actually, there's been a conscious resource allocation towards our PhD program. So I think that's a very positive development. The third thing, though, and maybe there, this is where PhD students have a say or have some leverage, is that you need to be, and I guess the pandemic didn't help, but you need to be present. You need to connect with faculty members to raise awareness, to raise attention. So the doctoral students have some responsibility to make the PhD program a living reality within departmental life. So, so there with the, I think, our return to normalcy in terms of presence, physical presence, I think there should be positive developments in that respect. So doctoral students are important, attending workshops, actually making appointments with the faculty members to discuss some potential issues. I would say, I think many faculty members I know would be quite open to talk, even if it's not one of their doctoral students, just to exchange views and to discuss. So raise the profile of the PG program. Doctoral students have a role to play in this respect, and that will get the program gain, I guess, further recognition. I think these are three elements to your question. Now, as there have been, I think, going back to your comments, my impression is probably there were several maybe directors over the years. So there's been ups and downs in terms of attention. And so, but now my feeling is that there's a focus and by the administration, and there's a focus to ensure that the program is successful and that the students are successful in finding a job. I think that's my impression. But at the end of the day, it's each student has a responsibility, but each faculty member also has a responsibility to take students seriously, and I guess to bring consideration when we're dealing with them. We're dealing with human beings, so to be considerate about their problems, their issues, and their situation. And I think it's our responsibility as faculty members to make sure that's the way we interact with students as well. So I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but you touch on several dimensions, but I think I have a feeling we're on the right track, but it's not the implementation maybe of a successful strategy in terms of making our program visible and in terms of outreach. It's not straightforward.
And it was a long answer, but I would add to your long answer. I would say, in Department of Accountancy, there was an initiative that has been done, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago by our colleague Sophie Audoucet, and they called it the Research Fest. You say, why Fest for festival? Because she said, we're in Montreal and we have the city of festival. But the Research Fest is 3 times a year. Our PhD student, we have this half a day when you have the faculty member and the PhD student, and they're presenting, what they're doing. So, and we give them feedback on their project and so on to make sure that they will not be lost. They will stay in touch with the department.
They feel part of a group.
Exactly, and this is why it's funny because the name, and thanks to Sophie and Ruxandra, the department that leading this, we call it the Research Fest, and everybody taking it seriously. We attend, all professor, all PhD student, and it's the way, and sometimes we're looking for research assistant, and this is a way, to connect and to make sure that our PhD students are not lost or not in touch, with their department.
And back when we were pre-pandemic, we at the end of the Research Fest, we typically went out for a beer or a Coke.
Yeah.
With the students. So the students and faculty members were together. So I think that was very important to ensure that there's proximity between faculty and doctoral students who are future colleagues. So I think the departmental level is very important in making sure that the students, the doctoral students, feel, I would say, recognized and part of a group.
But at the end, I don't know what is doing other department if they have the equivalent of the Research Fest. Do we have the question?
We do, and thank you for that very complete answer. No, it's wonderful. It's an ongoing conversation, I think, across the university, and which departments are handling in various ways. Also, the School of Graduate Studies has really kind of stepped up to making sure that students have this sort of, the question of mentorship is becoming increasingly important across the faculties and departments. And the questions of agency, Michel, that you brought up, the students themselves, to kind of speak up and get involved. We do have time for one final question. Majidul, would you like to speak up?
Oh, sure. It's so wonderful to see, Michel, that you have received Distinguished University Research Professor. I am absolutely happy. And since I know you, since you are in the department, you are so good as a person, as a faculty, as a colleague, and I was never disappointed when I spoke to you or I saw you on the aisle or anyway. Congratulations once again. I'm very, very happy to see you, that you have been speaking to us, and I have thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Majidul. That's actually quite touching. I really appreciate this. And no, I didn't pay Majidul to say what he just said. But it's great. It's just great to have colleagues like Majidul. So, and that's part of the enjoying my work. Part of my work is actually enjoying having colleagues whom you enjoy.
I think you underlined that in this idea of partnership and working together, and it was so impressive to hear all about your collaborative ventures. Maybe, Michel, just to close up, I'll ask you, this is kind of what's next question for you, only because you mentioned the fact that you enjoy lifelong learning and acquiring new skills, and that you're always thinking of how you could push yourself to develop your skill set. Could be within academia or as a passion project. Is there something exciting that you're working on next?
There are several things, but I would say right now, like I'm still supervising some students, still conducting some research, but I would say my functions at Dejardins, being on the board, I'm chair of their audit committee. I'm also on the risk management committee and the governance committee of the board at Dejardins, Plus, I'm a trustee of the Concordia University Pension Plan and a member of the investment subcommittee and chair of the audit committee of the pension plan. I think these two projects, plus my work at Cyrano, keep me fully busy. So I don't, and it also, they both allow me to learn all the time, because at both the pension plan and at Desjardins, we have education sessions every month. 1 hour bit on cloud computing, an hour bit on cybersecurity, another bit on some investment opportunities. So I'm always learning, and it feeds, in some sense, my research work and my teaching, because I teach at the MBA level. So everything is kind of connected, and I love it. So no big project so far, but I guess busy work days. But always in the mood that trying to, I would say, go to the next level in terms of understanding of the pension plan and the governance of financial institutions. So I think that's what's in store right now.
Quite a handful. Well, congratulations once again on this fantastic honor. Thank you so much, Emilio and Michel, for coming into ForSpace to participate in this conversation. We'll thank our colleagues, Loredana Carbone, as well as Paula Wood-Adams, who are working with us to make this series a reality, speaking to all of the distinguished university research professors one at a time and trying to learn more about how they got to where they are today. So thanks, folks. I'll remind you that we'll be taking this conversation, editing it down to a podcast and re-releasing it for your listening pleasure as a kind of shorter piece of about 20 minutes. So look out for that. And those of you who want to share the stream of this with your colleagues, it is available right now on Concordia University ForSpace YouTube channel. All right, that's it for us today. Thanks so much for joining us. And until next time, bye everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.